You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I am Lipp, the marketing manager at Stimulus Technologies, and I'm here today with Nathan Whittacre, CEO of Stimulus Technologies. And today we are going to be talking about kind of a burning question we've come across, and that is, what's new in regulatory compliance in 2025? Sounds complicated, but we're gonna go through it a little bit here. Welcome, Nathan.
I thought the burning question was going to be, since we're recording on National Pie Day, March 14th, 3/14, is what pie are you eating today?
That's true. That's true. So you're going to ask me how many numbers of pi I knew, and it's 2, so it's 3.14. That's as far as I can get.
I get to the 3.1415, and that's about where I stopped too. But I could tell you my kids, for some reason, my 2 boys, were on a camping trip we went on. I don't know how they got this in their head that they needed to memorize pi. And my oldest son, he got up to 200 digits of pi on that camping trip. And he remembered them. I thought, well, that's good for this week. And he actually remembered them for months. He'd still practice them and stuff. But I was so irritated by them testing each other by the end of the trip. I'm like, no more pie. I'm done with it forever. They learned a pie song in school. So that's, so there's an actual song that they learn, I don't know, in 4th or 5th grade when they learn about pie. So I just rather eat some pie, some chocolate pie, or
say what kind of pie. What kind of pie did you make a pie for today?
I have not made a pie for today, but if I were to make a pie, chocolate satin is my favorite kind of pie, and I really like pumpkin pie, but that only should be eaten in the fall, so I couldn't make a pumpkin pie in the spring. So
well, it certainly feels like fall here in Las Vegas, at least the past couple of days.
Rainy, windy, cold. What kind of, would you make any pie?
Well, I have a lot of apples. I bought apples and I didn't realize we already had some, so I probably should make a pie.
Well, can you make gluten-free pie? Is that pretty easy?
I can. Yeah, I can.
Nice.
It's not too bad. The crust is a little different, but I can make a good pie-like thing that's gluten-free.
Okay. Well, apple pie is really good too. So now that everybody's hungry, let's talk about a topic of compliance, which everybody else will drone out now. But we should not. I mean, this is really important stuff.
Yeah. And so, we've heard people talking about, with everything new that's going on in government and federal regulation, how is that affecting our compliancy regulations? So, Nathan, what do you think is on the horizon for 2025 in that?
Well, let me get out my crystal ball here and try to put on my vision. So, I mean, obviously the Trump administration's come out and said that they want to reduce regulations on businesses to increase the productivity of the country and increase speed to market on different things. So, there's this whole thought that, there'll be reduced regulations that allow businesses to achieve things faster. And certainly compliance rules is a burden on businesses. I really doubt that these compliance requirements are going to go away or be reduced, because the federal government's really concerned about cybersecurity and ensuring cyber protections for government agencies and all the way down to sole proprietor businesses. So most of the compliance requirements are really designed around keeping businesses safe and keeping consumers safe. And even though these may change a little bit, I really doubt that they are going to go away because it's just an essential part of doing business today. And more importantly, abiding by most of these compliance frameworks make you a better business, less likely to encounter fraud, losing money to a hacker, having your business shut down. I mean, these compliance requirements aren't just like for reporting, they are really to improve the operations of your company and ensure that you're keeping your customers and clients and employees safe. And in the end, protecting your hard-earned money as a company. So that's what they're there for. They're not there for Uncle Sam or some regulatory agency to say, "Oh, you got to do this because we want to make your business hard." It's really, doing this to make your business better.
And have there been any changes in 2025, or are there any coming up that business owners should be aware of?
Yeah, I think there's a few that we should be aware of. So probably a couple of them. The first one is the FTC Safeguards Rule. This has been broadening to more and more companies over the last few years, and so the Federal Trade Commission really feels that anybody that has any consumer data that consumer financial data should follow the FTC safeguards rules. So this includes, a couple of years ago, it kind of started encompassing car dealerships, which we've talked about on this quite a bit. But now it's accounting firms, financial advisors, mortgage brokers, anybody that's handling consumer financial data that they need to follow the FTC safeguards rules. So that's an expansion. And a lot of those businesses I just mentioned, accountants, mortgage brokers, financial advisors, tax preparers, a lot of these are sole proprietors or maybe very small offices that previously didn't feel like they had any compliance requirements on them. But this is now an essential part of operating a business. So even if you're a sole tax preparer working out of your house, helping people do tax returns, you now have to follow the FTC safeguards rules. It's not hard to be compliant with this. It's pretty much good business practices, but it is essential that you're following it. The other thing that we're seeing, CMMC is going into full effect. CMMC is the cybersecurity model for Department of Defense contractors. And that is going into effect and required for implementation in 2025. So that's the other thing that any business that is in that military Department of Defense supply chain now has to be compliant with CMMC and has to implement those frameworks and go through third-party audits. So some of these don't require third-party audits, but CMMC is one that requires certification, and you have to go through an audit to receive awards from the Department of Defense. Other things that are changing, there are some rules and updates that kind of came in beginning to middle of last year around the NIST framework, which a lot of agencies want their people that are working under these guidelines, like tax preparers and different agencies, have to comply with the latest NIST 2.0 guidelines. And so that's something that's coming into fruition this year, as those were released. NIST 2.0 was released beginning of last year. So those are probably the biggest three, and they do affect small businesses. Like I mentioned, safeguard rules, all the way down to solo practitioner tax preparer, CMMC, if you're in the DoD supply chain, even if you're multi-steps down in the DoD supply chain, you have to comply with that. And then ensuring that you're compliant with these NIST rules if you fall under any of those regulatory requirements. And then finally, states are updating some of their rules too. So even if the federal government, relaxes some of these rules, which again, I doubt they will, like states like California are enhancing their consumer privacy requirements, and some of the other states, in those areas are actually following along with California on their requirements. So, just watch out for new state regulations, as we're kind of, like in Nevada right now, the legislature's meeting, and there's always new regulations that come out from the legislature. So, ensure you're complying with new rules as they come out. And there are definitely some new state rules that are, making cybersecurity a little bit more, and compliance to it a little bit more stringent.
Do you
That was a
think?
big answer to a short
Yeah, I
question.
was going to
I'm
say you
sorry,
answered
Sherry.
all my questions, so we're done. And do you think that with some of the deregulation and some other areas that could increase the need for regulation in cybersecurity?
I can see that happening. As maybe some rules relax on potentially, like the Trump administration is dismantling a little bit the Consumer Protection Agency, the Federal Consumer Protection Agency. So there may be some stricter rules that states might jump in and put in place. So there may be deregulation on one side, but enhanced regulation on another, and that's what we see often with these type of things. Is that they want you to be protected, and again, to follow these regulations. It's just good business practices, like implementing multi-factor authentication, having an EDR in place, having outside assessments completed regularly, having a disaster plan. There's just a number of things that are just best practices that check so many of these boxes for these compliance frameworks. That it's if a business is doing those things, it's not hard to say that you're compliant.
Are there federal programs involved with any of this, or are any of those at risk of getting cut? Federal programs that help businesses with these regulations?
Not that I know of. The federal programs are the ones that require it. So, for example, I mentioned any DoD contractor has to be CMMC compliant. A lot of times, if you're accepting any grant money or federal grant monies or contracts, you have to certify that you're compliant with regulations. So I'll give you an example that is affecting us. As we've gone through and applied for BEAD grant funding for our broadband infrastructure. We have to implement internally and certify that we have it fully implemented, the NIST 2.0 framework and supply chain management framework. So, which is part of NIST 2.0. So, that is one thing that's happening. Is if you want these federal dollars and potentially state dollars, you have to certify that you're compliant with these regulatory frameworks. So that's that. I don't know of any federal assistance and state assistance to help you be compliant. You might check with maybe like SCORE this through the SBA that can give you some guidance, but most of the time it's on the business to ensure that they're compliant and pay for those to become compliant.
What federal agencies do play a role in compliance besides the DoD?
So, as I mentioned before, the Federal Trade Commission is part of that. They're the ones that are implementing the FTC Safeguards, Federal Trade Commission Safeguards Rule. So that's one of the biggest ones. Again, NIST is a federal standards agency, so the NIST framework is built around some federal standards. The IRS for tax preparers and accounting firms are demanding some compliance to the regulations. So if you're in accounting, SEC, if you're potentially either a publicly traded company, which most of the people we're talking to now are not in that category, but potentially if you're working with a publicly traded company, the SEC, if it's one step away from the publicly traded company. So if one of your clients is SEC regulated, then you may have additional compliance rules that you have to. So that's one thing that we're seeing is these federal agencies are saying not just the entity that we're working with, but down the supply chain. They want the vendors of that company to also be compliant. And so that's one of the changes we're seeing is going down the supply chain and ensuring compliance. So that's one thing that stimulus can help you with. If you are regulated by any means that we're talking about here, you also want to ensure that your vendors are meeting those regulatory requirements, because what we see a lot on the cybersecurity side is that firms get compromised and or potentially have financial fraud occur because one of their vendors was compromised. And so ensuring that your supply chain, your accounting firm, your law firm, your vendors that you're contracting with for services, all of those are meeting the same regulatory requirements and have best practices, will ensure that you're more than likely to not be attacked either. So that's one of the things we really recommend is moving down the supply chain on your vendors to ensuring that they're maintaining the same levels and standards that you are.
How often do you think a third party vendor is, involved, not involved like they did it, but involved in a hack and letting something through? Because we've certainly talked about it many times on here.
I think it's probably I'm all statistics are made up on the fly, but what we see is a lot of the news stories and our experiences with it too is, especially in the financial fraud side of things, it is happening in the supply chain. So I'll give you an example of way that potentially would work is, let's say an accounts payable person's email at one of your vendors gets hacked, and so they may through that email may send out an email to you saying, by the way, our ACH information has changed. Please update your records to pay to this new bank account. And it's coming from your vendor, company that you pay often, and it's a legitimate email. It looks like it's coming on their form, and so an accounting person on your side, and I messed that up. It's an account receivable person at your vendor and accounts payable person at your company. Will just go in and change the pay information in your accounting system, and then you start paying this other account. And then suddenly this accounts receivable person at one of your vendors calls up and says, hey, we haven't received payments on your accounts for a while. And then you look in your accounting system, say, I've been paying you for months on time, no issues. And then come to find out that the account was changed and you've been paying the hacker and not your vendor. This is a very common attack and a common tactic. And, we've seen some of our clients have to deal with this, and not just, small vendors, but large vendors that get hit with this. So there was a large casino group here in Las Vegas that had this happen, and so they had sent out these letters, and they were paying the wrong accounts, and come to find out that this money was lost over time. So it's just, you have to be very careful about this, that your vendors have the same and strict security that you do, so that you don't have to deal with financial fraud in between you and one of your vendors.
And so if you're a small business owner and you don't maybe have somebody dedicated to compliance, you probably don't have somebody that's their only job. How do you advise them to stay up to date on this?
It's one of the things that we recommend using outside advisors. So it's good to have an attorney that you work with regularly, and maybe do a annual review with them to ensure that you're compliant with any regulations. So a small business attorney keeps abreast of these regulatory changes. And then a compliance firm like we at Stimulus Technologies can help you implement and understand what regulatory compliance you may fall into. And so working with outside vendors and outside firms can help you through this process, or at least steer you in line with a company that can help you with it. So there are some models we implement and other models that we will outsource because they're, specialty firms. Like for CMMC, we would recommend a few firms to help you with that, or HIPAA compliance, we would work with a third-party firm. And so, a company like us, we will help you understand what regulatory requirements you have, and then work with a third-party firm or do it internally to help you with those compliance. So you don't have to hire on a person. And I would never recommend that, because these regulations change. That person wouldn't have full-time work, especially in a small business, or even lower middle market business. Working with a firm that's has dedicated people to this will help you implement and stay compliant with these things. And it's not free money, or not cheap, but it's not overly onerous either to do this. So it's within budgets for even a sole proprietor to get this done.
And what should business owners do if they haven't reviewed it in a while? What are the first things they should look at?
So doing a third-party assessment. So one of the things that we highly recommend is at least annually have a third party come in and assess where you're at from a standpoint of regulatory, cybersecurity, IT infrastructure, and it'll give you a good idea of potentially some some holes in your environment. We actually just did a webinar on this. As when this this podcast publishes, it'll be a couple of weeks ago. But our webinar in March, we talked about third-party assessments, and we brought on the company that we use to do third-party assessments on us as Stimulus Technologies, and they help do third-party assessments for our clients. And having that assessment done at least once a year will help you understand where you need to be. If you're a stimulus client already, that's part of our new cybersecurity packages and IT packages that we offer in 2025. We offer that as part of those packages. If you're not a customer of ours, we offer a free assessment. Just to give you an idea, just a one-time snapshot assessment, and then give you an idea of what you need to do, where the gaps are, and then you can decide if you want your existing IT company to resolve those issues, or us as a company to help you resolve those outstanding things and become compliant. And again, all these compliance requirements are there to help you be a better business. They're not onerous, regulatory requirements. They really are just there to ensure that you're keeping your data and your money is safe, and your clients' data and your relationship with them safe.
Yes, definitely. So the bottom line is these regulations and requirements are not going anywhere.
I don't think so.
All right.
That's what my crystal ball says.
Yeah. So for 2025, your crystal ball says keep going with compliance.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, any last thoughts on these topics for this year?
I think I'm just going to go grab a piece of pie and enjoy it now.
All right. Well, yeah. Happy Pi Day, even though it won't be Pi Day when you can listen, but it was Pi Day when we recorded. Thanks, Nathan.
And thank you, Sherry, and thanks everybody for joining us today.